decisions made at the same time. They were independent decisions, and so they kind of lined up at the same time. We thought, yeah, that doesn't work. So,
what did you talk about in closed caucus?
Religious liberties and anti-discrimination.
What's going on with that?
Well, a continuation of SB, what is it, 296?
Mm-hmm. Which is in committee right now.
It's going into committee right now, and there were no problems with that bill, as I understand. I wasn't at the committee, but there were no problems with the bill yesterday. But there wasn't a lot of time for public comment, and there had been people that wanted to participate, and so they really felt, and that was a bipartisan sentiment, I understand, to let that hearing carry over till today, so that they could have a better or more have a meeting that could have a hearing that could have more public comment. But I expect that to go well. But there are questions. I mean, it's a big issue, and if you think about what Senator Adams has had to do in terms of herding cats and getting everyone and getting something that really subscribes to the good, perfect not being the enemy of good. We all know in the different areas of policy we attempt to influence that's a very difficult thing to do. So anyway, a lot of questions, and so we went through that. It was kind of our anti-discrimination religious liberty day.
And is there any consensus out of the caucus over? I mean, I'm assuming it may come up for a vote tonight.
You know what? I think it is. I think there will be, but there were a lot of, as you can imagine, with it's a big group of people. A lot of people have given thought to this over the years. There were just a lot of different questions, and so it was a good vetting of the issue.
Of how the body is going to vote though tonight on this bill?
I think it'll be successful. I think it will be a successful floor debate, and I think the bill will pass out.
Did you take a vote in caucus?
We did not.
What
No,
about?
just questions.
I noticed that Representative Christensen substituted out his 322, gutted the non-discrimination portion, so now it's pretty much a religious liberties bill. What's going to happen with that? Because we're kind of down to it, and I don't think you guys are considering House bills.
Well, we told him yesterday as he was working on that we would make it. We would consider hearing his bill tonight. What you need to know about Representative Christensen's bill is he's worked hard on his bill started before the session, and as announcements were made and other bill sponsors began working on other issues, Representative Christensen has done a very good job of not wanting to compete with the legislation that's being proposed. He didn't want it to be seen as a counterpoint, and so he is his work has been to complement, not to undermine or influence the work, the bills that are coming out of the Senate. So that's why you see the substitutions and some of that movement. He's just trying to address some areas that he thinks the bills coming out of the Senate may not hit on as well, and so, or not even as well, just don't hit on. And so he's trying to work within that same space.
But is the Senate going to sign off on that? I mean, is this one of those bills that do they view it as it may compete with? Even though you say it complements, they may view it as competition.
So I don't think they'll view it as competition, but it does not have probably that. Well, if you're talking anti-discrimination and religious liberties, then you're bringing different.
Yeah, it doesn't have that
together.
anymore.
It doesn't have that. So it doesn't have that aspect to it, and what its prospects are in the Senate, I couldn't tell you. But I do compliment Representative Christensen for continually. He has continually worked to not interrupt or again have anything that would compete with the good work that's being done with Senator Stuart Adams. And so I think things are coming together well. It's what we had always hoped on that front, that we would see lawmakers working on bills that would make things better than we found them, but not cancel each other out.
Can you characterize the concerns that were raised in the caucus about SB 296?
You know what? It wasn't really. Some of it was specific to that bill, but I just think just trying to understand different hypothetical situations or scenarios, or how do you apply the bills that are being sponsored into our everyday lives? It's kind of a new approach, and I thought there were great answers. And it's clear that this bill isn't everything to everyone, and I think that's kind of a sign of a good compromise bill, that I don't think anyone would walk away saying this is their unique, perfect solution. But I do think that common ground that's been found is It's great. It's a great accomplishment.
On the subject of compromises, Mr. Speaker, each year in the sifting process, there are some casualties. Comment on any that you feel that just would have been great to have, but we just didn't.
Well, that
Couldn't
dog
get-
bill, that dog bill's just weighing on my mind. I don't know how in the world that rules committee never saw the light of day on that one. I don't know how that didn't get out. You know what? I don't know I don't know what that graveyard, where I become more aware of bills that aren't making it through, or when bill sponsors come and they're frustrated, or you're bringing it to my attention, making me feel guilty. And and so right now, I don't hear that. I don't see it. We've done a good job. Years past, you've seen us take our House third reading calendar and wipe that board and then reprioritize. We didn't do that this year. We've let those bills go as you've had your hearing, as you've gotten it's passed and on the floor. We let that process go through, and we never did wipe the board. We never did reshuffle the deck, which is inherently always brought frustration for someone who was right up there, ready to have their bill heard, only to see that board wiped. So we didn't do any of that. So it's really been a natural path. You'll see also that we didn't wipe the board in the Senate. Well, it was technically wiped, but it'll be up there as it was yesterday in terms of if you worked hard as a bill sponsor and you got your hearings and through the House and you got your Senate committee hearing and a favorable recommendation, we didn't want to see those bills necessarily taken off of the Senate's House third reading calendar. They're still there. And in the days left, we want to see bills and bill sponsors who've worked hard see their bills heard. So we're not reprioritizing bills until we get to that final day. That would be different than we've done it since I've been here. We've done that over a number of days in the past. We're doing that only on the last day, and that's just kind of a safety valve. I think you'll see much of what you're seeing up there looks similar, but we just need a safety valve of that last day in case there are some bills or some things that we do need to get up that might have slipped through the cracks.
And continuing to talk about compromise, Healthy Utah Cares. Has the House or Senate at this point, Utah Cares?
So I look back, and when the Senate passed Senator Schumer for a number of days, and I think it might have been 5 days, and then it ultimately came over to the House, and I think you're seeing that pause on the House side as well. The pause when Senator Shiwazawa's bill was coming to the House is for the same purpose that I think you've seen that pause here, and that is that hope for compromise, that hope that you can find that common ground. And I think you have two bill sponsors, and Senator Shiwazawa and Representative Dunnigan, who, if it could just be the world according to those two, I think they might have figured this out. But they've got caucuses and executive branch and a lot of people.
Do you think you
to
can
work
make it?
on.
I'm sorry. Do you think you can make a compromise in 2 days in the time remaining? It seems like both sides are pretty far apart still.
I'll describe this to you. If you want to report it, it's up to you. When we began this process way back in December, I would tell you that we probably had, in a large caucus, our greatest number more comfortable with the wait and see approach coming into this session, wanting to see how other states handled this expansion. What were those population numbers? What were they projected? What did they end up being? What flexibility could be given as states were not signing up right away? And then what additional waivers were being granted, and what could Utah learn from that? There was a strong and a deep well of support for a wait and see. You've seen the House caucus move away from that position. The moderated approach that was presented by Senator Alan Christensen of a more measured, smaller group of population within that coverage gap. We've moved past that, and the House has actually moved, and we have our greatest consensus, as you saw from Representative Dunnigan's bill that received 56 votes on the House floor, to a place where we feel good covering the coverage gap of 0 to 100%. We feel that is a great move. I mean, that's a great shift for the House from where we began in this process in the dialogue to where we are today. We would be hopeful that there could be some migration over within what we think are very safe harbors. This is traditional Medicaid waivers that we're pursuing. It's a long-term plan that is not one that would necessarily be repealed in 2 years. And we feel good about that. And it wasn't easy, frankly. to get to where we think that the House is today. And we feel like the effort to compromise, we've been working, and I know that Representative Dunnigan's been working to do that all along. And so when you look at a coverage gap, and if the issue has always been that the Obamacare left a population uncovered, I think that you can honestly look at the Representative Dunnigan's bill and see that that population of people, we support providing health care coverage. Is it everyone's perfect? No. Does it create a large enough federal entitlement program to bring more federal dollars to the state as much as people want? No, but if we're talking human beings and we're talking about doing something, leaving the place better than we found it, I think you'll find within the work of the House that goal met. So
You have 2 days left, though. Are you going to reach deal, or is it just not going to happen until after the session?
Well,
What
the
do we
saying
need
is,
to do to get to
yeah,
yes?
so look, if the saying is it takes two to tango, in this little dance, we got three that have to tango, right? I think the House has been dancing the whole time. I mean, we're moving. I can show you evidence that we have moved through this session to where this caucus is. We need a Senate. We need an executive branch to move as well. You need everybody ready to dance. And I think that we've shown that we have the ability to do it. Again, I wouldn't undersell the difficulty in having a group of House members and a lot of, I think, a strong case made for wait and see, to be able to make sure that the numbers you have, the approach you take is the most responsible. But we've left that. We're ready to do something. We're ready to pass something in the law that provides health care coverage. I think that's good. I think that we're here. We're ready to
But
get
are you going to
something
get
done.
is something going to get done
I
between
guess
now and midnight Thursday?
you'll have to ask the Senate and the executive branch, because I
They're
think
not
that,
very optimistic right now.
well, they're just sourpusses then, because we've been dancing over here all session long, Ben. We're ready to go.
It sounds like ready to go in your mind means you've moved as far as you think you can move your caucus, and it's up to the Senate and the governor now to move.
Well,
Make some
I
compromise.
not unique to this issue. That's how, I mean, if you look at the transportation debate that's going on right now, if you look at any bill that we are addressing this year or in legislative sessions in the past, you start here. I ran the private club bill years ago. Governor Huntsman wanted to get rid of the private club designation. The LDS Church and some stakeholders were wholly opposed to getting rid of that private club designation. We started out on complete opposites. We got to common ground. You have to bring things to the table, but you can't, if you want to stay here, and if compromise means I'm here, and until you get here, we haven't compromised, well then that's not the way we've ever done it up here in the Capitol. And so I'll tell you that I've run bills myself. I've seen great reform passed into law, but it has always required people to come to that common ground. And I think the House has moved greatly in this debate. And again, it's not been easy to do.
So has the House moved as far as it's going to move?
I want to resist any ultimatums, because I don't think that promotes fertile ground for people to come together. But I will tell you that we have a track record. We've shown, I think, a great distance traveled, and we would like to see some of that as well.
How
Let me
much
ask
of
you
the
about
public?
Let me ask about the politics of it, please, because if you end up with 2 years of Healthy Utah, then Utah Care takes over, doesn't that just put you 2 more years of debating this same subject? Because there'll be a push at the end of the 2 years to say, we don't want to go to Utah Care.
Well, yeah, I mean, the let's do it now, but know that in 2 years it'll look like something different has been hard. It's been hard for us to see our way through. The other issue is, the very night we were debating Healthy Utah, that there was Supreme Court oral arguments on whether this federal exchange is even constitutional. And the idea or the prospect that in June, the very federal exchange, that if we were to pull back as per Utah Cares into that 0 to 100% space, assuming that those that were 100 to 138% would be covered in the federal exchange like they are today, we can't even really say that with certainty. There's a Supreme Court decision that's going to arrive in this summer that could completely change that assumption. That brings us pause. I mean, that is not solid ground to make decisions or generational decisions on. So that has been tough. That has been brought up extensively. The King's X option, as I call it. We'd rather find a place where we can pro forma this out and know that we're in for the long haul. And even if it isn't everything, we feel better about it. That it's something that if that Supreme Court went any different way, it doesn't affect the safe harbors of what Representative Dunnigan's bill is addressing. That 0 to 100% is not touched by that Supreme Court decision. We think that's important. We think there's merit in that.
Speaker Hughes, speaking more generally than just Healthy Utah, this isn't something unique to this session either, but there seems to be this conflict between the House and the Senate on some of these bills, even though you got a supermajority in the Senate of Republicans and a supermajority in the House. Where do you think that conflict and friction comes from?
You know what? I would argue that Medicaid expansion is really the aberration in this session. I think we're coming together. I see good signs on transportation. I see good signs on the anti-discrimination and religious liberties front. I think education funding, we've come together well. I don't see this divisiveness throughout the session or between the House and Senate. I think we talk so much about Medicaid expansion and what that ought to look like that we think that that's just the governor and the Senate and the House arguing all the time. But that is one issue. I think if you look at the session as a whole, I think we've worked well together.
Do you think you've been responsive to the public?
I do. The challenge we have is some of these issues are not best shared through a quote in the newspaper or a poll question that you're receiving on the other end of a phone. Our best work, I think, and as I've talked to my colleagues, are our town hall meetings, or where we're able to spend time with our colleagues or with our constituents and really walk through these issues in a little bit more in depth, where we can kind of explain some of the challenges or the worries we have with the decisions that we make. That's how we want to be. We need to be responsive and being able to have that. But then we're going to have to be good at this narrative too. So when we're done here, we can really explain to the public what work we've done and why we think we have left the place better than we've done.
Are you
Two more
concerned though that the
questions.
public is going to feel like if there isn't an agreement on Healthy Utah and Utah Cares, that the House let them down on this?
Well, you guys will decide that. You're going to pick your winners and losers here this year, and I don't know. We're going to do our work. We're going to. I think we have evidence that we have worked very hard. Where we started this back in December is not where we are today. I'm proud of all the work that the House of Representatives has done in this space. We've had Healthy Utah heard in a committee. We've actually heard it held. It was actually debated on the floor, not the suspension of the rules to hear a failed bill in committee, but Representative Chavez-Helk had a fourth substitute to Representative Dunnigan's bill that was Healthy Utah, and there was a vote on that bill. So in addition to a committee hearing, there was a floor debate on this bill, and it didn't pass. And that's okay, because bills don't, but there's been a debate. There's been these hearings. There's been a coalescing around what we feel is a solution and something that we can bring forward. I'm proud of that. Whether the public understands that, we'll do our best as lawmakers in our districts to communicate our message, and then you guys will handicap it accordingly.
Do you have a
There's
sense that the House is willing to take the nickel gas tax increase that the Senate's talking about?
You know what? We sent over yesterday, I think by 51 votes, a great reform package, I think, for transportation. It's multimodal in nature, meaning that the motor fuel tax was reformed into a percentage of the fuel that you purchase, which I think finally addresses the unit tax getting eaten away by inflation every single year and how it shrinks while our demand on our roads grow. There's a continuing gap, but also local options. We see that counties and cities and transit have had they have challenges in terms of serving the public too. We have daytime commuters, and in Utah, we don't have these different political subdivisions fighting over market share. We're just all trying to desperately absorb the market share or the commuters. And what you saw in Representative Anderson's bill was one that spoke about a local option, giving locals tools in their toolbox to address the issues that are confronting them in terms of how people move. And then the reforming of the motor fuel tax. Now the Senate will get that. They'll put in their priorities, and it'll come back probably different than the way we sent it out. Not a whole lot, but probably a little bit different. And then we'll have to weigh that, and we'll have to see if it's something that we can get consensus for. I can't predict with as big and diverse as the House of Representatives is, what the answer will be, but I love the direction we're going. I love that we were able to get good consensus on the bill coming out of the House, and we will await to see what the Senate brings.
If I
The-
could just ask you
Thanks.
quickly about a new poll that says that it's one